House of Reps today in rowdy session as motion to rescind the real-time clause sparks uproar. And the floor of the chamber today with and which remains optional after was passed. Coordinate review, but Akwa Ibom said expected to retain 76 words on the 2012 Supreme Court ruling. What exactly is the state of things? Who owns it? Who gets it? We'll be finding out tonight. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. Right here in Abuja. Attention, is going to be debate over the matter we've been debating over the last few weeks. Now, the National Assembly, once again, we saw it divided over the future of electronic transmission of election results. The House of Representatives erupted into election results. The House of Representatives erupted into a rowdy session after a motion was moved to rescind its earlier decision making real-time transmission of results to the IRF portal compulsory. Although the nays appeared louder during a voice vote, Speaker Tajuddin Abbas ruled in favor of the motion, prompting protests and an executive session. Meanwhile, in the Senate, presiding over by the Senate President Godswill Akpabio voted by division to retain electronic transmission as optional with a manual backup in cases of network failure, with both chambers holding differing emphases. Attention now turns to the Joint Conference Committee tasked with harmonizing the Electoral Act amendment, a decision that could shape the credibility of the 2027 election. Part of what a lot of Nigerians are looking forward to is how eventually all the draft becomes one, and what have they gotten today after the lawmakers pass their decision on the Electoral Act law. Let me take you through what happened today on the floor of the Green Chambers, where we saw much of the drama. This is how it was all started. It was a moment where a clause-by-clause voting, or the vote on the votes and proceedings was supposed to happen, and the Deputy Speaker of the House, Honorable Benjamin Kalu, was the one who was presiding over the session. And this is how it all happened. Let me allow you to listen.
The thought has 156 clauses, and we are going to vote on them for them to become the parts of this legislation that governs our election in Nigeria. So I'll just put the question, having gone through it with you time and again. I'll put the question, clause 1 to 10. Clause 11 to 20. Clause 21 to 30. Point of order. Point of order. Point of order. Point of order. Clause 40 to 50. Line by line, line by line. plus 1.
Okay, so when that happened, we saw the motion was going to be moved, but let me allow you to listen to the chair of the Electoral Affairs Committee and the professor when they were moving the motion and what really transpired. This is how they moved the motion earlier.
To repeal the Electoral Act number 13, 2022, and enact the Electoral Bill 2026 to regulate the conduct of federal, state, and area councils in the Federal Capital Territory election and for related matters, HB 2479.
Thank you very much.
2022 and enact the Electoral Bill 2026 to regulate the conduct of federal and area
please can you find your seats, my dear sister?
Federal Capital Territory elections and for related matters, HB 2479 be considered by the Committee of the Whole. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Well, that added to the fire, and lawmakers, some of them wouldn't have it. But this is the point where they really lost it. And you follow how it went from the chamber to outside of the chamber, and unprintable words were being said because of the anger they felt. Some of them felt betrayed by what has happened to them. Take a listen to how it all now went awry and went really rowdy. All right, and that was all it went. I mean, I speak very, very good Yoruba. I would have loved to interpret it, but maybe you have to find a Yoruba friend to interpret what that meant. So it was ugly. But if you go to the Senate chamber, they went into a vote division, but it was 55 to 15 that we saw. Those who were in favor of how the Senate passed it without making the electoral commission optional was what went through. And what couldn't happen, some of the senators couldn't have their way, is when they say it should be mandatory, they couldn't have their way. So it was a case of the majority had their way, minority had their say. But in all of this, all of the warnings about the processes, the amendment of the law, and how it will affect our electoral process, what is the implication of all of this? Let me bring one of the minority lawmakers in the National Assembly and a member of the House of Reps Committee on Electoral Affairs, and also a member of the Harmonization Joint Committee, Honorable Fed Agbedi. He's one of the senior lawmakers in the Green Chamber. Thank you so much indeed, Honorable, for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Barrister Chief Shehu Okumbale.
I would love to pick a title in Bayelsa State.
Good evening to Nigerians.
Right. Thank you so much indeed. What was it that your colleagues were saying there when they were chanting, when they were going to the press gallery?
Well, of course, you heard what they were chanting. It shows their displeasure over what happened. It couldn't have reduced to that level. But I say kudos to the opposition today. They made me proud. They did their best. They stood for Nigeria and for Nigerians, and for the right thing to be done. However, I think that chanting got to the point when the majority party, the APC, decided to now make it a party affair, Ordinarily, if you step into the chambers, yes, there's majority, there's minority. But we hardly, make things appear as if they are partisan laws that we are making, But when APC announced that all APC persons, yes, we asked for the House to be divided so that people should vote their mind and know where they stand. Because when the issue started, it was not It was not a partisan thing. The massive support for either side A or B was across party lines, and when the majority party felt threatened that if they don't use some untoward strategies, they were not going to have their way in the day, they decided to announce that while members were calling for division, they now saw division as a way to announce that all APC members should come to one side of the House. I think that was what largely prompted
it was the Speaker who said
the reaction.
Who was presiding at the time?
Okay, going by our procedures, when it comes to consideration, except money bills, when it comes to consideration of reports, the Deputy Speaker presides as chairman of that session. And so when the motion was carried to come into committee of the whole, the Speaker had to step aside and join, the plenary while the deputy took his position.
So he was the one who took that decision that APC lawmakers should move onto one side.
Well, a number of the APC members were shouting, a number of them, their leaders and everybody shouting, APC come to one side, APC, And so the APC moved to the right-hand side, and then the minority parties.
So the House was primarily turned partisan.
Oh, yeah,
at that point.
Exactly, that was what happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I still...
That was when the threat on APC members to move to one side. At the beginning, there were no party lines. People believed that the real-time thing was good enough and that there was no need for a proviso. And that's what Nigerians wanted. And that we are not making laws for ourselves. We are making laws for the people. And that was the collation at the public hearing. And so we should go with that. That was across parties. It wasn't between majority party and minority party. But I'm saying that it got to all that chanting and all that.
What does that chant mean?
I don't know. I'm not a Yoruba man. Okay. But some will say, when you say APC only, some will think that it's stealing of money or it's stealing of money. I think that it has multiple interpretations. That's the way I see it. So because when we were
minority lawmakers were chanting and calling the ruling party thief. Stealing what?
It could be anything. It could be manipulation of the process.
Is it about 2027 election that they think that it has been stolen or what?
Take for example, as members of parliament and as committee, you hold a public hearing. You invite people. The people express their desires. Ordinarily, what you expect to give back to the people is their desire, not our desire. And that is where, members of the minority...
so what we got today is not the desire of the people?
Yes.
But who would you say is the people? Is the people only minority votes or minority voices? No, what about the majority?
No, we describe the people as the stakeholders who come before you in a public hearing. Any public hearing you organize, you will have majority opinion, you will have minority opinion. And for us legislators who preside, who hear them, who receive their memos, and their presentations, you go with the majority. This is what the majority in that public hearing wants. And that is why it formed part of the report. You know that the House of Rep passed it. You know that this particular clause was agreed to by both House committees, both in the Senate and in the House of Reps. The Senate took a step further to even set up another ad hoc committee to review the report of the committee that was led by His Excellency Senator Lalong. Okay? And then that ad hoc committee further also recommended exactly what the main Electoral Matters Committee recommended. And so both houses had the same recommendations because there was a joint session to harmonize the reports. And so what was presented in Senate was the same as was presented in the House of Reps. And so it is at their point of voting in the House of Reps, it passed through. The way the report, came, it passed through. But in the Senate, my colleague and friend, Mogono brought an amendment. And maybe most of the members were caught off guard. And that is where this entire controversy started from, by adding a proviso. And for us, following the legislative balance, this is what the people want. Why don't we give them what they want at the public hearing?
For those of you in the minority, you do not, and I don't know whether I'm capturing your minds properly, and I imagine that the inference from the agitation on the floor today and up to the exiting the chamber was as much as though the version that is going to be passed into law is not only acceptable to you, but you think that you have been defrauded. Does that capture the feeling?
You are very correct. Not only we have been defrauded, that the people's opinion has been defrauded. That's what it means.
Do you reckon with the explanation of someone like Senator Opeyemi Bamidele, who wrote as a majority leader and saying, look, we have these issues. We cannot go all out to say we are handing over the result collation process to technology. We do not have the infrastructure 100%. We do not have the technology 100%. We need to give a proviso should anything fail. Do you agree with Senator Opeyemi Bamidele in that regard?
Shehu, let me explain it this way. First, we are past all that. I don't think that Nigeria is still where...
From 4 years ago.
Still where Senator Bamidele, my friend, explained it to be. We are past that stage long ago. But let me tell you, let me put it this way. The electoral process is key with Form EC8A and the work of the presiding officer. This has nothing to do with transmission real time, because the presiding officer will have his physical results, will sign his physical result, agents will sign. Whether agents sign or not does not actually invalidate the result. The presiding officer will move with that physical result to a collation officer. The presiding officer is not a collation officer. Where he will terminate his process is taking that physical result to a collation officer who will receive it from him. So all this has nothing to do with that physical, practical responsibility that the presiding officer.
In law, but is he has
his own role to play? Yeah, his own role to.
His vitality, his prominence is still there.
Oh yes.
You can't take it. You can't vitiate it.
You can't take it. Even the transmission cannot be done without him. So you are not taking any responsibility of him. So for you to provide a proviso is an overkill. You could have provided so if the man's functions were terminated.
But what do you fear the most for those of you who are a proponent of the things that were removed from that clause? What do you fear?
You see, when you say, for those of you who are proponents, we are not the proponents.
But yeah,
the Nigerian stakeholders.
There are those who are for and those who are against.
No, we see, the Nigerian stakeholders who came before the public hearings that we held across this country are the proponents. No member of the House proposed that it should be this or it should be that. These were collations from the public hearing in the amendment process of the Constitution Review. And so what some of us are doing is, in the lawmaking process, the people have their opinions because you invited them.
But the opinion
so we are only defending their opinion.
But you have failed to do that today.
Yeah, that's the beauty of democracy. The beauty of democracy is that majority will have their way, the minority will have their say. So we were happy. You see, if the opportunities were naturally flowing and were given, the rowdiness was not necessary. If you don't gag people, it is when it appears that you want to gag the representative rights of members.
Well, some of you feel gagged today.
But that's it. You see, any rowdiness you see, that is the cause of rowdiness. Any rowdiness. Because we all have equal rights. Okay? So when I raise up my hand, when I say point of order, okay, you are bound to listen to me. Because I'm speaking for my people. All right? But when you want to deny me that opportunity, take for example, the chairman of Committee of the Whole started 1 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, to 50, of course. And people are saying point of order. People are raising up their hands. When you ignore them, that's what causes rowdiness. Rowdiness is not necessary.
So then you're inferring high-handedness of the leadership of the House, and you're making it look as though whatever that is passed today is an APC law.
Of course, that's exactly what happened. Because they announced so. They announced so.
I asked you a question earlier, Honorable Fred Agbedi, and the fact that the areas that were not captured, according to you, that were against the people's stance, what do you fear the most that could happen in our election if those areas were removed?
See, what exactly Nigerians are looking for is free, fair, credible, transparent election. Because so many things have happened. So many things have passed under the bridge. And so Nigerians are struggling to see how they can have an electoral process that they can rely on. That is it. Let me give you a narrative. In the last assembly, we came to this same level. We came to this same level. And in each assembly, 2015 to whatever, both the baby and the bathwater were thrown away. Both the baby and the bathwater. I can tell you in that assembly, it got to a point where we told President Buhari and his people, okay, you write the law and bring it. So long as it can improve the electoral process, we will be ready to process it. Yet, we didn't get there. In the night assembly, we followed up and ensured that this technology is brought in. We ended up achieving giving INEC discretion. That was the most we could achieve. From whatever we wanted that we feel would have given it transparency, until we fought until we had to now lower it to giving INEC a discretion. Some were even saying that whatever decision INEC will take, they should come back to National Assembly. And some of us said, no, we are going for elections. We are in the field. How do you come back to always approve something for INEC, but, okay, let's give them the discretion. That was the level we achieved. In this dispensation, I think we have moved a little bit forward. We've gotten a step forward. A step forward to the extent that instead of the word transfer and discretion, we have been able to achieve transmission, we have been able to achieve technological use, which means that INEC is at liberty to employ any technological device that can make the elections look more transparent, fair, free, and all that. So it's an ongoing battle.
Yeah. Has the Harmonization Committee finished its work?
The point we are is beyond Harmonization Committee.
Now, yes. Because we were supposed to meet yesterday.
Yes, we had some meetings. But all that is now history.
So the harmonization process was not literally emphasized in this case. It went back to the Committee of the Whole.
You see, when you say conference committee cannot add or subtract. But when you go beyond adding and subtracting, then it's no longer a conference committee. The rules are clear about it. So what we did today was to repeal and reenact. Now sometimes you ask, okay, you are repealing. Where are these new inclusions coming from? Well, of course, the leadership has said, oh, this is what we have done, this is what we have done. That is process for you. It's still an issue of transparency.
So you think things were done in an opaque manner?
Well, I don't think that things were done exactly to meet the due process of lobbying.
Now, the issue of Ramadan and Lenten period falling into the bracket of, or the timeline which has been stipulated by INEC, that has been resolved, isn't it?
It's not that at this whole period. Yes, before now, I heard about Ramadan period and all that. But both Christians, Muslims, and people of other religion, we all questioned the rationale for such a statement. Because we have been conducting elections in February, we have been conducting elections in March. And Nigeria has no state religion. So you can't be talking about, when you are talking about the country and things to do, then you say, oh, this time you are taking this Ramadan period. No. So even Muslims said no. If you want to use that, it was not a right prescription to make. So that was not an issue as far as I'm concerned, because it wasn't in the corridor of discussion, you know. But the fact remains that the 360 days that we had passed was such that we cannot keep the timelines from the point that INEC came out with their timetable. And so it will create an illegality. So it was now necessary to amend, which the Senate version captured. The Senate version said at least 180 days. And so if you are doing conferencing, instead of the 360 days, you take the 180 days.
All right.
Legislatively intact. Due process followed.
All right. Honorable Fred Abedi, thank you so much indeed for your time tonight. Honorable Fred Abedi is a member of the House of Reps Committee on the Electoral Affairs and also a member of the Harmonization Committee. He's from Bayelsa State and a member of the PDP, the troubled PDP. Well, thanks so much indeed for your time.
I don't know if you are the one troubling PDP, because most of you are the troubles PDP has. Okay. You are creating whatever narrative you like.
Who is your national chairman?
He's an SAN. He's not just an ordinary person.
Okay.
You should know that.
So I see.
It's not like some people that has Agbero as their national chairman.
Well, you were the one who said it, not from me. We're going to break everyone, but when we return, who owns it? We'll be asking, is Cross River going to be now an oil-producing state? We'll be finding out after this break. The controversy over Cross River State's oil-producing status may be heading towards a decisive resolution, either in favor or against Cross River State. They lost that status, and it was a Supreme Court judgment. Well, as that judgment now being, is it valid or not? Is it in law? What does it mean? But the federal government's Interagency Committee on Nigeria's oil-producing state has submitted its final verification report to the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission following a 6-month nationwide review of crude oil and gas coordinates. The report reportedly validates more than 1,000 oil and gas locations across 12 states and projects that Cross River State could regain oil-producing status with over 100 verified wells, many linked to OML 114 within its maritime territory. However, the implications of a 2012 Supreme Court judgment are expected to retain 76 wells in Akwa Ibom State pending further judicial interpretation, where RAMFAC is now expected to forward the report to President Bola Tinubu. And why is RAMFAC dragging feet or developed code feet all of a sudden? The president is supposed to give his own approval, a decision that could significantly reshape revenue allocation and Nigeria's fiscal federalism structure. Well, I'm being joined on the program by a very well-known senior advocate of Nigeria, a former Ministry of Justice and Attorney General, Mr. Mike Anduaka. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. It's good to see you, sir.
Thank you, my colleague.
Thank you so much indeed. And also we have Honorable John Lebo, a former Speaker of the House of Assembly in Cross River. So thank you so much indeed.
Thank you, Sharon.
I'll begin with you, AGF, and you, you know the history, you know it way too well. And I know the sentiment that you have because you know so much about these conflicts and the controversy around the status of Cross River State. But would you say this is a scientific verification exercise or a politically convenient recalibration of Nigeria's oil revenue map?
Well, thank you very much. I speak more on the historical facts, what I did and what the former presidents, President Obasanjo, and then the subsequent President Yaradua, which I was the lead person in the Nigerian delegation, the UN-backed Cameroon-Nigerian Mixed Commission. Let me get you back. The Green Trail Agreement, which came into force in 2006, signed by President Obasanjo and President Bicker in New York, witnessed by UN Secretary General Kofi Annan and the Germany, representatives of Germany, United Kingdom, USA, and France. And this followed up in the meetings we had, the Mixed Commission meetings which were holding to iron up the implementation of the Green Trail Agreement. At that time, we were not dealing with Cross River or Akwa Ibom State, but we were dealing with how it cannot, the implementation of the ICJ will be harmonized down, and the interests of Nigeria in the coastal area will be protected. Because the ICJ did not mention Akwa Ibom or Cross River. But whether we have strategic infrastructures in the Cross River State, particularly the Eastern Naval Command, which was established during Gawan around 1970s, around 1974, with a lot of equipments. And those equipments, it was our duty to protect and ensure that our Navy have access to the sea. That was well negotiated out with the Cameroons under the Green Trail Agreement. And we had effectively protected our Navy. An issue arose in 2008 when I was to go and hand over. There were strong agitations from the people led by the senators there who petitioned to the president. And the president directed myself and the High Command of the Navy should go to the National Assembly and speak to the Joint Ad Hoc Committee of the Senate and the House of Representatives, where concerns were that if you say Cross River was hemmed out, then in the eastern side of Nigeria, coastal area of Nigeria will be hemmed out. Not issue of Cross River being hemmed out, but Nigeria will be hemmed out. Therefore, we went there, and the Navy demonstrated the map we saw, and the map that was submitted to the National Assembly at that time, in 2008, was clearly that there was access to the sea through the estuary from Calabar estuaries. So when I left office and I started hearing that Cross River as a whole is hemmed out, I was lost.
So you think that the 2012 judgment of the Supreme Court has some fault in it?
I'm not saying I cannot fault Supreme Court judgment. But what we presented, if it's not presented to them, the Supreme Court relies on what was presented to them. And of course, I have read the Supreme Court judgment too. And in the final analysis, the Supreme Court was also talking of demarcation and coordinates, you know. And I don't want to talk about that. But the time we actually handed over Bakassi, we ensured that Nigerian security and interests, which were heavily invested in Cross River, were protected. And we have ample access as a coastal state. By implication, our Navy having access
So technically, Leonard Stake,
Yes.
technically, you think that Cross River State deserve to recollect that status?
I think so. I don't even think they ought to have been deprived.
What do you then make of the Supreme Court judgment?
Well, Supreme Court
Because
judgment,
it's still subsisting.
as it is down, but a new dimension has arose. The continental shelf, which I also was the person who made the presentation. First, for increase of continental shelf boundary at the United Nations. I was the person. And got the approval. And I'm so happy that the President Bola Ahmed followed it up, and we have an increase in continental shelf. And then with the increase in continental shelf, vis-a-vis the position of Cross-River and the insurance, I believe the new discovery, they ought to have entitlement.
So, in law, because Supreme Court stands as at the very top of our court system and judicial system, and when the Supreme Court makes a decision, that decision is law. And to that effect, one will imagine to obviate the position of the Supreme Court. How do you go about it? By way of technical report?
I'm not talking...
If there are new... Because what the bone of contention here is that the Supreme Court has made a decision. Is that there's a position of the law about it. If there are new development or new positions or new knowledge about the situation of things, what do you think that should happen?
Well, Supreme Court has always been not just a court of law, but a court of justice and a court of policy. And instances exist where the Supreme Court can reverse itself. And if emerging facts are glaring, I'm talking on the general position of the law, including issue of fraud, judgment obtained by fraud, if the circumstances appear that there was a miscarriage of justice and the judgment was obtained by misrepresentation, Supreme Court can revisit. I'm not talking of Cross-River issue, but Cross-River is talking of new coordinates, taking the coordinates from what we did. Of course, the map, if you go see Cameroon map, you can see clearly that I don't see where Cross-River could have been said to be hemmed out. And if these new facts emerge and they are collectively given or presented,
new facts.
That is one aspect. Another aspect is that Supreme Court can revisit cases where there's gross injustice. For instance, we have the case of Savannah Bank versus Ajelo. Bank were suffering, just like maybe Cross-River is saying they're suffering. If you return a loan from a bank without governor's consent, the banks were unable to. For quite some time, that was the position of the law. People would go to court, go to the bank, get money, and go make sure the bank, see the governor of the state, where the land is situated, did not give consent, and the money perished. And when the injustice came so much, Supreme Court revisited the case and made sure that such agreements are still enforceable, equitably enforceable. So now we are talking of here in Cross-River, new discovery. I'm not talking of what Supreme Court ruled, which is 76, but the new discoveries.
So I was asking procedurally, when there's a position of the Supreme Court, and there are new facts, how do you now fix it? Because the position of the Supreme Court is law. Akwa Ibom said is recognized. Cross-River said is not.
No, but the position now is this. 96 words, but the new discoveries are not part of the Supreme Court decision. And these are issues that equitable common sense will come in. And of course,
but can you then override the position of the Supreme Court with a report, just a mere report of the technical committee?
Judgment, the Supreme Court that confined itself to 76 words cannot be any stretch of imagination be extended to include the new oil wells found as a result of the extension.
I imagine that people should go back to the Supreme Court.
Well, people might go, but this new discovery requires a political wisdom.
So this is a political action that could be taken.
For the new discovery.
But legally incorrect. Until that has been fixed, isn't it?
No, I am saying the new discoveries because the Supreme Court judgment tied to the 76 oil wells. But you have additional oil wells as a result of extension discovered. And also the strong argument on the part, particularly that if you have the Calabar insurance, there's no way you can say the whole of that area is hemmed out. Because if it's hemmed out, means you need to remove the naval base from there. Of course, practically, you also have a Calabar port there. So these are clear examples that political wisdoms can revisit that area. You see, the two states appear to have enjoyed a good relation for quite a long time. And again, the new state the two states appear to have produced one of the greatest leaders in this country. And the leader is Senator Godwin Akpabio, who can resolve this issue because he can go above personal interest. Because when your neighbor is poor and you are rich, you are endangering your security.
Give me a moment, Mr. Ndoaka. Let me come to Honorable Level. And I wanted the former AGF to give us that historical background. He's in the know, he was in the deep, he understands the issues, and it was important for him to give her, because I know that in a lot of ways you will be biased, being a son of the soil.
Yes.
Where is this continental shelf? Where is it discovered? Where are these new oil wells that have been discovered?
Okay, first, when the governor came in, he put up a case management strategy team, because Nigeria ought to have had a case management strategy team after the judgment of the ICJ. First, to do situation analysis, gap analysis, and a gap closure strategy. Then Nigeria too has to go back and demarcate the boundary between Nigeria, Cameroon, Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, and the internal boundary between Cross River and Akwa Ibom. So when the governor came, we looked at the ICJ map, we looked at the continental shelf geology, we looked at all the estuaries in Nigeria, and then we picked out the judgment of the Supreme Court. We say first, the judgment of the ICJ Cross River is not opposed to it. The judgment of the Supreme Court in 2012, we are not opposed to it. But we were able to produce compelling evidence, which we submitted to the president based on two issues. The first issue is that first, the decision of the Supreme Court dealt with specific issues, and the judgment, the lead judgment, ended up with saying the 13% derivation revenue on the 76 oil wells offshore between Akwa Ibom and Cross River State must continue to be attributed to the state on whose maritime territory they are found to be located by the relevant government agencies. That is the National Boundary Commission, RAMFAC, relating to the Office of the Surveyor General of that. So the Supreme Court distinguished between surface, water, maritime territory, and continental shelf geology. The difference between water territory is that this is the water. The continental shelf is that what is under the water is prolonged and is elongated and is not determined by the body of water, which is why the International Court of Justice...
Would meaning that whatever you see on the surface of the water might be in my compound, but deep down it has it's moved beyond my compound.
One of the mystery of God is in the architecture of continental shelf geology, and that is why the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea 1982 took away the rights for the management and extension of continental shelf from countries to the United Nations Commission on Continental Shelf, which the AG applied for the extension of that continental shelf. So the Supreme Court, realizing the declaration of the Supreme Court that Cross River State is not a littoral state does not stop Cross River State from owning oil wells. Ogun State is not a littoral state, it's a littoral state, they have no oil well. Anambra is not a littoral state, Imo, Abia, and they are oil producing. So they're in Nigerian Constitution and in Nigerian oil and gas law, there's onshore oil wells and there are offshore oil wells. The Cross River State continental shelf geology, based on the Cross River Basin, down from Udukpani, down to the mouth of the sea, even if you say we don't have that prolongation, contain enough surface coordinates. And in law, oil and gas law, oil follow coordinates, coordinates follow reservoir. So we're not opposed to the Supreme Court judgment. What we always said is that let the interagency committee also confirm the locations of these 76 oil wells based on the judgment of the Supreme Court. Because if you distinguish this judgment from Imo and River State, the court gave the name of the coordinates, the location of the host communities, and gave out exactly where they are located. In Rivers and Akwa Ibom, the court gave definitely, in Cross River and Akwa Ibom, in this case, the court said the agencies should go back and fix it. Now, independent of the agencies going to fix it, what we did was to say, we presented this petition to the president and raised two arguable issues. Number one, from the map of the ICJ and the failure of the National Boundary Commission to demarcate our boundaries 24 years after that judgment, there's a body of water that Nigeria has not taken possession of. The Navy produced a hydrographic survey which clearly shows that if we don't protect this water was given to Nigeria. You can't wish it away. And Navy produced that document. Federal government adopted it. And Navy is collecting pilotage levy. That is for pilots who decide to take refuge in the estuary. There are towage levy. If a vessel is bad and they want to tow it into the estuary, is there. Then environmental pollution under the MAPO Convention law. The estuary exists not by virtue of the provision of a law, but it's geography and nature.
Let me quickly ask you. The National Boundary Commission, the NBC, is involved here. RAMFAC is involved here. The presidency is also involved there. But are those who are saying that there are personalities who have intervened in this matter who said the two governors, Cross River and Akwa Ibom State, should have a dialogue, should meet. Have they met?
The president had ordered long ago that that should happen, but there's been some bias activities by some federal government agencies, and I explained to you why, and why this report is
that the reason why they've not met?
Yes, I'll come to that issue. First is that this report, this particular exercise, based by Cross River State, was based on urging Nigeria to recover its body of water so that you don't put Cross River State in danger of pirate activities, which Navy has done. As I speak to you, Navy is already collecting pilot and towage levy up to $11 million into Nigeria account. You can confirm that information. So the mouth of that estuary, by virtue of geography and law of the sea, exists. That's one. The second aspect is that these provisions, we wrote a letter to the National Boundary Commission, Revenue of these three agencies, and our question was simple. Can you show us the map after the judgment of the Supreme Court or after the FCJ showing that the Calabar estuary no longer exists? Because we say the estuary has been wiped out, the Nigerian map will be affected. The architecture of Nigeria will show. We asked for that map and show us the boundary with Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea. The reply to that letter is also attached to this document. National Boundary Commission said they are still negotiating the boundary between Cameroon, Nigeria, and Equatorial Guinea, and that the boundary between Cross River and Akwa Ibom after the ICJ judgment has not been demarcated. Then we wrote to the Surveyor General of the Federation, it's your constitutional responsibility to produce map. Surveyor General of the Federation said, well, there's a map they tendered at the Supreme Court about onshore-offshore dichotomy that declared that Cross River is not littoral. We're not part of the map because it does not contain standard coordinates of Nigeria. Then we also wrote to the President, who wrote to the Revenue Mobilization, what is the position about Cross River State status to own oil well? What did the Supreme Court judgment say? I'll drop copies of that letter. The chairman of Revenue Mobilization replied to say, the judgment of the Supreme Court did not presuppose that Cross River will not have oil wells. The judgment affected its littoral status. If we see fresh evidence of ownership of wells, Cross River will be listed. That is why this evidence came in.
You've not mentioned the Supreme Court judgment of 2025 in the boundary allocation, which favored Cross Rivers on land and maritime-wise favored Akwa Ibom State.
First of all, Cross River surface coordinate does not include coordinates from that area. We have not. There are two OMLs involved in that area, OML 231 and OML 451. Because of the issues involved in that judgment, we have not visited that area. What is pronounced is the fact that we're talking about 76 oil wells from the Supreme Court. When we presented the evidence coordinates of 245 wells, the committee verified on ground, well by well, 239. Our argument is that we are entitled to all of 239, but it is safe to remove the 76 oil wells of the Supreme Court so that in the future we can go back to the court and say this activity has been done.
So fundamentally, this technical report of January 2026 is saying that deservedly that Cross River can have the status of oil producing state. Is that right?
Yes. Because
does it lie? The only thing that is remaining now is that RAMFAC is in favor. The technical report is in favor. But there is a need for presidential approval in this matter before that can be passed. Is that right?
Yes.
And afterwards, the 13% oil reservation formula will be in favor of Cross River State. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
So what is your prayer tonight as a state? What are you telling the Nigerian people?
As a state, what I'm telling the Nigerian people that the fact that the Supreme Court declared Cross River State as not a littoral state does not stop Cross River State from owning oil wells. We have onshore oil wells. Number two is that we do not actually need the judgment of the ICJ sitting out Bakassi. We don't need that judgment to be able, because the court did not sit out any oil well between Nigeria and Cameroon.
So what is Cross River State losing by not benefiting as an oil producer?
Cross River State would have lost approximately about 9 to 10 billion per month by virtue of the new coordinates that we found. Now, we have 239 coordinates. Even this report, we have issues. We must give credit to whoever put this report together and that team. because that report deals more with what Nigeria is losing, about 1.7 trillion in oil revenue. So its Cross-River State matter is even secondary to Nigeria. But the point is that Cross-River State is losing as much as, 239 oil wells calculated by production level. That's what Cross-River State is losing. But the committee still went ahead and said this, what they have done across all the 10 oil-producing states is that they divide whatever is found equilibrium of 50-50 using the geological configuration of the continental shelf. And that's what they did in Cross-River matter. Right. Our argument is to say, give us our 239. Yeah. But that's what the committee resolved.
We need to go now. Let us see. If you have the power to resolve this, what would you be doing right now?
I will first invite the leaders of the South, especially the Senate President, to show wisdom and leadership and put the state together and make sure that both states, there's a win-win situation. Especially exclude the 76 oil wells that are incumbent, but focus on the new discovery and they ensure that Cross River that houses very strategic military equipment that protects that area, the territorial area of the Eastern Naval Command, have a share of the new discoveries that will be beyond a certain level. Don't yourself from that state.
Thank you so
much. You think more of the leader, and you make sacrifices so that the country, there will be peace and there will be harmony within the South-South, especially between Akwa Ibom and Cross River.
Former Justice Minister and Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Michael Andualka, thanks so much indeed for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Honorable John Lebo, former Speaker of the House of Assembly in Cross River, said thanks so much indeed for your time.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. That's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Akimale. God bless Nigeria.